into the problem of evil. Let us begin with a question.
Kia ora, now my haramai to the Curiously Catholic podcast. I'm going to be talking to Caitlin, who runs the Crash Course Catholicism podcast. It's on Spotify and various other places. We're going to talk about lots of cool things about how to be Catholic in the world today, which is exactly what we're trying to do with the Evangelion and the Curiously Catholic podcast. So, if you want to get involved with what we're doing, do check us out on our website, www.evangelion.co.nz. We're going on all our socials, on Instagram, we're on TikTok, we're on YouTube, trying to use more Facebook, and get involved in the mission, because we're going to make Aotearoa a Catholic whether they like it or not. Well, that's the dream anyway. But without, so that's less from me. Let's get on with inviting on Caitlin. So here she is. Hey, how's it going?
Hi, thank you for having me. Very well.
Brilliant. So, for those that may not be aware of all your content, all the places you post it, could you give a quick overview of who's Caitlin?
Sure. Well, I work as an academic. I did my PhD on Shakespeare and contemporary theatre practice. So that's my kind of like main job. And then on the side, I run a podcast called Crash Course Catholicism, because I'm completely obsessed with getting people interested in Catholicism and explaining it to them in a way that is accessible and doesn't feel like it's in this little bubble over there that people can't kind of be a part of or understand. So I sort of want to bridge the gap between the secular world and the Catholic world.
Brilliant. I mean, that's really cool. That's definitely something that I try and do. I'm not an academic, but I suppose the easiest way to describe where I'm coming from is I have ADHD, so I've got my fingers in lots of pies, and trying to run Evangelion. I love podcasting and various other things, and so I consume a lot of influences from various different places. And one of those places is like, entrepreneurship, fitness, and stuff like that. So I hear a lot of wisdom, and I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
And the church is, but this is easier to consume than, say, I don't know, the Catechism of the Catholic Church, or even, Matt Fradd. Sometimes I struggle with. I remember the first episode I listened to of Pints. He was doing, I think, Pascal's Wager, and then he was comparing it with something obviously Thomas Aquinas said. Pascal's Wager, I get it, 100%. I'm down. And then he started talking about, I don't know what he was talking about, but it was something from the Summa, and I said, you've completely lost me now. I had to listen to it 3 or 4 times, still can't remember it. I just remember the strain that was in my brain when he was going over it. So yeah, I'm down with that idea. I love Catholicism, and I think other people should be Catholic, so that's why I started all this.
Yeah. Totally, and I really think it's true that like the truth should be accessible to everyone. If something is true, then anyone can understand it on some level. There's some entry point for any person if it is true. There's no aspect of the truth that is inherently inaccessible to other people. Like there should be a pathway for everyone to understand things, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, and I think, well, that's an interesting topic, because also it's, I think there's like a level of truth that people require. Like something that I was talking with Father Dalton about, someone can have a completely accurate understanding of something theological, and they believe it with their whole heart, but the reason they believe it is because their parish priest said so. And so they don't understand it.
Yeah.
And so there's that level of truth. They're like, it's like, yeah, I believe in transubstantiation. Can you explain it? Nope. The church teaches it, though. And they're usually right. So.
Yes. Yeah. And there's something to be said for that. Like, people are often, I mean, whatever level you're at, everyone is at their own level and at their own sort of place in their faith journey. So for some people, they do start in that place of, well, my mom told me, or my parish priest said so, or I heard it at school or in a catechism class, so I've just accepted it. And there's nothing wrong with that. But then you don't want to remain in that place. It's like you can go deeper. There are ways for you to understand yourself and to kind of go beyond just the place of passive acceptance because someone else told you that it was true.
Yeah. And I think, well, there is that tension within me of the technical understanding of things. I've said this numerous times on the podcast and to various other people. When I converted when I was 22, and after my I think just before I was getting baptized, I said to one of my friends at the time, I said, so when the water goes over my head, those Vatican II documents, it just goes straight in, right? I don't need to spend the time reading those, do I? Because like one thing for me, ADHD and dyslexia, a big tome of documents isn't something that really entices me to. It's one of those
Yeah.
weird things. Like
Yeah.
Catholics are like, oh, I've got the whole of the Summa on my shelf. Like, great, that's where that would stay in my house. I would never have
Yeah.
a use for that.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's kind of, I almost feel like the position that I'm in doing like with both academia and with the podcast is that I sort of think, well, I'm doing all of this so that you don't have to, and I'm happy to do all of it because I'm a big fat nerd, and I absolutely love sitting down with the catechism and like going deep into it and trying to figure out what the heck Aquinas is talking about, and that's my jam. I love it, but I also appreciate that not everyone loves it, and not everyone has to. So I'm like, that's fine. So if I love it, then
Yeah.
I can do that, and then I can share it with other people in ways that like means that they don't have to do that themselves if they don't want to.
No, and that's wonderful. And your content actually is really both entertaining and easy to consume, which is what I really appreciate about it. I was listening to I've seen a lot of your short form stuff, which is great, but I was listening to one of the long form episodes, and it was just really easy to have on in the background whilst I was doing something, which is when I listen to most things, but also think, oh, that was interesting. Oh, I can come along with that, and you do it in a really easy to consume way, which I really appreciate and definitely needs to be done nowadays. But getting back onto you, you don't sound like you're English, but you are in Bristol.
Yes. Yes, I am Australian, and I
Oh, well.
moved to the UK in January of this year. So,
Brilliant. Well,
but
because
yeah,
I'm
my
from the
job's in Bristol.
UK and I moved to New Zealand, so we're
Yeah.
almost, and we both have a Catholic podcast, so there's
No.
lots of links,
There you go. Yeah, exactly.
Was it your Shakespeare studies that sent you to the UK?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I think I always wanted to come to the UK and be closer to Europe. I've always felt I really love Europe. I really love the depth of like, I don't know, cultures and different traditions. And I love how, I think as an Australian, we get so used to this country where, you can get in a car and drive for 20 hours and you're still in the same like suburb.
Yeah.
Whereas here, it's like, you go in the UK, it's like you travel an hour and there's a different regional accent and like different cultures and like different sort of traditions and different, and then, Europe is incredible as well. So, yeah, I just have always felt the times when I've traveled over here, I've always felt really at home and I really like it. So I'm sort of giving it a go, living over here, and hopefully we'll be able to sustain it. Let's see.
That's great. Yeah, I have to say that was one of the things that I found not most difficult, but striking moving to New Zealand, and the fact that everyone in New Zealand is just from New Zealand, whereas from town to town, the accent can change if you've got the right ear for it, and then there's like all the rivalries which turn into this like quite unique banter. The North-South divide, and then football team to football team, and yeah, when I came over here, I was like, "Who do we take the rip out of?" And they were like, I guess Australians." Yeah, and I was like, "No, well, that's boring. What about the people next town over?" It's like Also, I started out in like rural New Zealand, so you didn't see anybody for very long
Wow.
periods of time.
Yeah. New Zealand has some beautiful countryside as well, though.
Oh
That would
yeah,
have been
yeah,
awesome.
yeah. It's an interesting place, New Zealand.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've enjoyed being here, so I haven't looked back yet.
I always, I often say that New Zealand is everything that Australia pretends to be.
Oh, really?
Like New Zealanders, yeah, Australians, we love talking about how we're super like relaxed and chill and like easygoing, and actually we're actually quite English. Like we're not as relaxed as we make out. But then New Zealand, those are genuinely the most relaxed people I have ever encountered, and genuinely to their bones, a very chilled out bunch of people.
So relaxed, they're horizontal, eh?
Yeah, exactly. I love it. I love New Zealand.
That's like, they say the tall poppy syndrome is like someone sits up from lying down. It's like, what are you doing? Lie down. It's like, just
Yeah,
relax,
yeah,
mate.
yeah,
Just take it
yeah.
easy. It's a blessing and a
Exactly.
curse in many different ways. Yeah,
Yes.
that's the thing that struck me when I came to New Zealand was it's so small. Why haven't why haven't we
Mm,
evangelized everyone? There's only like 5 million people here, you know, and like
yeah,
I just spent the year living in London, and then I moved to New Zealand, and it was funny because
yeah.
when in England, I would say I'm definitely not a city person. I can't really stand being,
Mm,
especially in London. I can manage like Manchester or Liverpool for a period of time, but like London, after a day, I've had enough. And so I was like, oh, I'm definitely not a
yeah.
city person. New Zealand will sort me out. And I came to New Zealand. And I was like, get me to a city now because there's just nobody around, and I'm a very extroverted person. So yeah, Auckland to me is. Not a city, but it is for New Zealand, so I've got to take what I can get. Um, but
Yeah,
yeah, so
exactly. Yep.
you've moved to Bristol to take on live in Europe and see how that goes. So your academics that's in like literature.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and theatre. Yep.
Oh, great! That's
Yeah,
cool
yeah.
stuff, man. I
Yeah.
love both those things. If I could read more, I would.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but yeah, and so you started this. When did you start the Crash Course Catholicism, and what made you think this has to happen?
Well, it was like 4 years ago, so it's like 2020 or 2021.
Hmm.
And I was very lucky to grow up with really, really, really great, really excellent formation. And my parents were really on the ball about, making sure that we were catechized and that I think you've actually interviewed my dad before, by the way.
Who's your dad?
But William West, he wrote a book about the
That's your
Shroud of
dad.
Turin.
I have.
Yeah, that's my dad.
That's cool. Look at you, man. Look at that. What a guy.
Yeah, so yeah. So he's a very intelligent, very analytical person and a real deep thinker. And so he and mum were really, really good at, and they're both converts, so they're really good at making sure that we knew our faith really well. So I had a lot of formation. And then I encountered a couple of different situations where people I knew were wanting doctrine classes, either because they were becoming Catholic or because they were already Catholic and they just felt like they needed to know their faith better.
Hmm.
And so I would give these classes, and just every time watching people just be on fire, like so excited and so happy when they realized that this stuff made sense. And that was a thing that I just kept hearing, like, oh,
Mm,
it just makes so much sense. Like it's so, of course, like it's so, this is the truth. Like this is
mm,
truth. It's
mm.
so cool. Like it makes sense. And like, why can't we I don't know, like why can't everyone know this? Like why can't more people have access to this? And so I started thinking, well, I mean, I've got the formation, I've got the classes already prepared, and the classes were following because it was the structure of someone going through RCIA, so following the catechism, the structure of the catechism. And so I thought, well, I might as well just start recording them. And of course, it's like famous last words. Like it's way, way more work than that. I soon found out. But yeah, I just thought, I think people need to hear this, but also they need to hear it in a way that that doesn't feel like there is a lot of incredible content online, and a lot of it comes out of the US, which is
Mm.
amazing, and I consume a lot of that. I love it, but it's also culturally different, and so for some Australians, they would struggle to connect,
Right.
and it didn't feel like it was kind of in a sort of language that they could understand or receive. So I did also want to make something that was accessible to Australians, and that felt kind of similar, like there was something that they could sort of connect with culturally as well.
Mm.
So that was another
Yeah, that is
one.
a really interesting part of like, well, I say Catholicism, but that's because Catholic Church is like universal. It's everywhere. We
Mm.
always come up against the reality of different cultures and the way that people talk
Yeah.
differently and express themselves differently. There's 22 different rites of Catholicism. and all that. But it's
Yeah.
just it goes deeper than that. That like even
Yeah.
communicating between people, like we've got
Yeah.
people that are more analytical, and we've got people that are more, I don't know, let's say creative, and so that those two elements don't really mix together. And so you have people that are
Yeah.
saying, "Oh, it's things like hypostatic union, transubstantiation, and like going into the depths of this really technical language." Which I don't want to demonize, because it's actually really it's essential in because there is a technical element to truth. There is a right way
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
explaining it, and it does need technical language in order to fully explain it. Otherwise, you'd just be talking forever, and then things would get lost
Yeah.
in translation. So it does have like a necessary level, but then there's the people that only exist at that level, and it's
Yeah.
weird because I'm definitely not a technical person and not very
Yeah.
analytical. Can't get, like, as I was saying, when it comes to like the Summa or Thomas Aquinas, I listen to it because I know it's good, but it doesn't mean it really goes in. Like the things that really inspire me are the stories of the
Yeah.
saints, more mystical experience type
Yeah.
stories.
Yeah.
And so, but then I'll be talking to somebody, and I'll be saying something to me. It's like, wow, this explains it perfectly, and they're saying that's crap,
Mm.
because if you think about it, like they pull apart everything I've just said. It's like, this is why it doesn't work,
Yeah.
and it comes back to that point I was saying earlier. It's like, well, for me, it's all I need to understand him to believe. And
Yeah.
they say, well, yeah, but you haven't addressed these other issues, which somebody
Yeah.
else
Yeah.
could bring up, and it would tear your argument to pieces. Well, I'm
Yeah.
convinced. And like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I feel
Yeah.
like it sometimes gets
No,
away from the human person a bit.
yeah. Yeah. It's true. I mean, I think there's always got to be a balance, and it's about like figuring out. I mean, you can think about it if you think about the fact that the faith is a relationship with a being, and that's something that I've been thinking about a lot lately. The difference between Catholicism as a set of ideas or values and Catholicism as a relationship with God. And I
Mm,
think that's a really important thing to be reminded of at the moment, when we can see this real upswing in people interested in cultural Catholicism and in Catholicism almost as an ideology, and sort of wanting to return to a kind of Christian society, which is a beautiful idea, but that needs to be done through Christianity, not as a set of ideas, not as just a set of rules that we follow, because then it is just another ideology, but as a society made up of individual Christians, all of whom have a personal relationship with God.
mm,
Um, and are trying to live a life of virtue. And so, kind of like what you were saying about things remaining on an intellectual level and not really being accessible to as like on a personal human level. I think that's really important to have the balance of, yes, we need the theoretical knowledge and we need those values. We need to understand what Catholicism is, but none of it is meaningful if you don't have a life of prayer. Like if you're not praying, if you're
yeah.
not going to mass, if you're not saying the rosary, if you're not like, if you don't have a personal relationship with God,
Mm,
then it is just another ideology, and like it's not going to get us very far. So we
yeah.
need both.
And that's the real interesting tension point. And I think it is what sets Christianity above all the other religions. Is it has both those elements. You get like the
Yeah,
Eastern religions like Buddhism and such like, and they're very spiritual kind of, you know, they've got practices and things, but it's about a meditative experience more than anything. And then you've got like the other Abrahamic religions where it comes down to this law, this legalism, like in Islam or in
yeah,
Judaism. And so, and that's why Christianity has this. It's brought them together, and it's
yeah,
the I think one of the more annoying things about Christianity, but the thing that is essential to making it true is it has both those elements of, yes, you can be technically brilliant, and Word on Fire, Bishop Barron's work in kind of rejuvenating this the kind of intellectual tradition in the church, which is brilliant. It's fantastic. Is necessary, but I have conversations with friends that are super, super smart, and you try to explain something to them that is maybe a bit more spiritual, a bit more relationship based with Christ, about like how you interact with the Eucharist. It's like, oh, it makes sense to me because of body language, and like the thing that
Yeah, yeah,
convinces me most about the resurrection from the Bible is after the tongues of fire in the upper room
yeah,
after Pentecost.
yeah,
It's not the fact that you take that away. If I was someone that was walking down the streets and I met Peter beforehand and I met Peter after, it's the change. It's the thing that isn't written
yeah,
down. It's the behavior, and that speaks to me
yeah, yeah,
more than it does the text, or like the theory behind it. And
yeah,
but we have that together, and you can't pull them apart. But you can also kind of pick one or the other, and they're still just as
mm,
valid because
yeah, yeah,
they're you know they're one and the same.
yeah,
Uh, and it's frustrating,
yeah.
but I think it's brilliant
And
as well.
yeah, I think, yeah, definitely it is. And like God made us and he knows us and he knows that like we are a world full of people with different, you know, I don't know, personalities and tendencies and levels of understanding and abilities and it's not like what kind of God would kind of communicate the truth about himself to us in a way that only one kind of person could understand. That wouldn't be a very loving God if he was
Mm.
like, I'm over here, and the only way you're going to access me is if you all get PhDs.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
No,
Mm.
like he knows the nuances of every single person, and he has a way for that person to understand it, which I think really comes home when you see parents explaining the faith to their children. And a child can, I have such a clear memory of my mum saying to me when I was really little that God is like a circle that has no beginning and no end, and it just kind of it just has always been. And when you're 5, that makes total sense, and that's
Mm.
what my mum's mum said to her as well. And then you get older and you start thinking, actually, how does that work? Wait, hang on. And then you might start thinking what, and then you sort of like you find your own way into discovering those truths. But every person, some people connect more through, yeah, like you say, things like behavior or stories or someone's testimony or even just the example of seeing another person living a Christian life. Maybe that's enough to convince you. Other people need to have an answer to every single
Mm.
theological question they need to, and that's just wonderful. It's like, yeah, this is
Yeah,
the
yeah.
richness of humanity.
And I
Every
think
person, yeah,
there's something that's it's necessary to have, but you've got to put yourself in the situation where it's necessary to have. Because I think there is an element where you could live your whole life with a child's faith, because you're in a Catholic community, your parents taught you something, and you've only ever been surrounded by Catholics, or maybe you're Protestant here, but there's no real challenge there, and there's nothing wrong with that, which is kind of annoying because you know that there's so much more out there,
mm,
but that's
mm,
faith. You've got what you need. I
mm,
listened to one of my favorite entrepreneur influencer guys, Alex Hormozy. He's always talking about being successful, and for him being an entrepreneur, it's start as many businesses as you can, earn as much money as you can, and this is how you do it. But this in the same vein, if your whole aim in life is to have an extra $10,000 at the end of your paycheck every year, and that's all you want, you've won. That's the end of the game. And so there's
mm,
that dichotomy within the faith of, oh, if all you want to do is really faithfully turn up to mass every Sunday, and that's all you do, you have won. You don't need to
yeah,
go on Crash Course Catholicism or listen to the Curiously Catholic podcast. You can just do your daily prayers, go to mass, and you are just as far along as Thomas Aquinas, because you believe these things, and it's frustrating, and it's completely fine. Um,
yeah. And I guess in a sense, like there's some nuance there because
mm,
we could like I could easily spend my whole life kind of just going to mass every Sunday and then like that's it and I get to the end of my life and whatever. And like you say, because you're either going to heaven or you're not. And at the end of the day, if the end of your life you are in a state of grace, then like in one sense, yeah, that's great. You like you made it. At the same time, what I love about Catholicism is the difference between being saved and being sanctified, which I think is something that we kind of do really well, and we understand on a level that maybe doesn't come through in Protestantism. Because for a Protestant, there's heaven or hell, you're saved or you're not saved. Whereas for Catholics, it's like, yes, you might be saved and you're on your way to heaven, but are you a saint yet? And this is the thing, is that every single person is called to be not just a Catholic or a good person, but to be holy, to be a saint. But the way that you do that is going to be different for every person. And it doesn't necessarily mean having to do something completely extraordinary. Not everyone has to die a martyr for their faith. Some people will, and that's amazing. But for some people, I think, and then I think this is what you're getting at, that like for some people, your path to sanctity is going to be, I go to work every day and I do my work really well, and then I offer it up to God, and I take care of my family and I pray and I go to mass, and I'm not out there necessarily saving the world or doing like externally incredible things, but I am developing just as much of a deep and rich spiritual life that is becoming deeper and richer as, someone who might externally be doing kind of incredible things.
Yeah, and I think the point I was driving at, but I forgot to finish making, I just got too distracted, is we kind of have to put ourselves in a place where we are challenged. And that doesn't mean, fine, let's go find the nearest Protestant church and go tell them all to be Catholic, maybe for somebody. Let's go and write some theological tome. I was talking to Simon Archer a couple of weeks ago on the podcast, and I was saying to him, we were talking about the concept of suffering, and there's no way of avoiding it. You have to go through suffering, and for some that's going to be theological literature and understanding on a technical level, but for some it's going to be more anecdotal faith. My job is as a nurse, and so I'm confronted with people in really bad situations with their health, and often I'm confronted with things that really faith would solve. And so I didn't say, right, what challenge should I have? I'm going to pick nursing because that's going to give me these theological challenges, which is going to grow my faith in this way. This was just an answer to a call that I was given, that God put in my heart. And so, but in that moment, I'm going to be challenged in that experience. This is where God wants me to challenge. He wants me to be a father of 4. He wants me to be an emergency nurse, and he wants me to podcast, because these are things that I genuinely feel called to, and that will cause its own challenges. But there will be challenges, and I suppose you could say Padre Pius feast day been recently. It's like, oh, brilliant! A monk just stays in a monastery, just prays all the time, reading religious texts. Yeah, he had stigmata, mate. And that's not just, oh, my hands are bleeding. It's like going through the passion on a daily basis. He was given the ability to like see souls. That's not going to be pretty all the time, man. It's not bells and whistles.
Yeah, I think sometimes often I think we kid ourselves that we can somehow escape suffering. And it's so funny because our Lord says it again and again and again and again. He says it so many times. He's like, if you follow me, you will suffer. You will have to take up your cross. Like that, this is the nature of being a friend of mine. Like this is what it is. And we're all like, yeah. But like, can I not suffer?
Yeah.
But like, why am I not a millionaire? Like, why is my life not perfect? Why do I have this small inconvenience? Why is the bus late? This is an outrage. It's not fair.
Yeah.
It's this weird, because I think we have an inbuilt instinct. Like we're not made for suffering. We're made for joy. And so I think we instinctively understand that suffering is a disorder. Like it's not what we were built to experience. And so we have this desire to stop suffering and to avoid it, and this instinct that it shouldn't be happening, which is true, but that doesn't mean that like it's not going to happen, or that it isn't part of our journey to heaven, because it absolutely is.
Well, and there's also the beautiful Catholic understanding of suffering, in that it has been sanctified. It's been it's a path of redemption. And so God was
Yeah,
like, okay, suffering's entered the world. He didn't say, well, it's going to be tough. See you later. Bye. He said, okay, use it.
yeah,
Okay. Um,
yeah,
life gives you lemons.
yeah,
And so they'll just go and start making lemonade and get it. It starts
yeah,
off really sour. I have to say though, like, my side interest is entrepreneurship. Such a great analogy for, the faith of basically no one's going to be there for you. You're going to fail again and again and again, and you just got to keep going, and then eventually you will succeed, and the people will be cheering for you. But when you're succeeding, you don't need people cheering for you. So like there is that. That's the story of suffering of, like, I keep praying my rosary and I feel nothing. You know,
mm,
I don't enjoy it. It's not my favorite thing, but I just keep doing it, and you just keep doing it. Go, 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 and you'll fail, and you'll do a bad rosary, and you'll do a bad rosary, but one day you'll hit a rosary, and it'll be the absolute sweet spot, and then the next day will happen. So just keep going.
mm,
Um,
yeah. Well, and also that that process of suffering in and of itself is rich, and I think that's something where Catholicism offers something that the secular world doesn't. That I think, as far as we can get in secular terms, when it comes to explaining suffering or understanding suffering, is to basically say, just get through it, and it will get better. Or this is going to be, part of your story, or, this will strengthen
mm,
you. Or, but actually, what Catholicism offers is that it's on the cross. It's in that rosary where you feel nothing. That's where you're already because you're saying the rosary, that's a good rosary.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
and that's actually the place where you are becoming holy, and where you are, it's like, yes, you will hit a point where, like, the more you allow suffering to transform you, the closer you will become to God, and the holier you will become. But at the
mm,
same time, it's like, it's not just a process that we have to get through. Suffering isn't just something that we kind of pass through and then find joy. It's like, in joy, sorry, in suffering and through suffering, that is the place where, paradoxically, it like, I always think of the cross itself as a kind of like paradox of, like, two conflicting points. And I think it's expressive of the fact that joy and suffering meet, and that we are right at the center in that place where we suffer, but that is also the place where we find joy and where we find
mm.
grace and holiness, which I think is very unique to Catholicism. There's nowhere else that offers that rich and understanding of the power of how love suffering to transform us.
Mm, mm. Yeah, it was funny. It just this whole thing is just a bit we've just been talking about is reminding me of a conversation I was having with Simon Carrington, and I think it was when he first started becoming a speaker, and it's when he was dealing with his stutter, and he was talking to someone about it, and they said, "It's lucky you're Catholic, eh?" And he was like, "Is that an insult? What?" It's like, because, oh no, I think it was when he's talking about, like, his speaking gigs, and it was like, when he was starting out and it wasn't too good. He said, "It's lucky you're Catholic," like, in the sense that you have somewhere to. The guy was trying to say it's where you have someone to do this thing, and then you can do it as a job. But it sounded like an insult. But it really fits into, like, every kind of mournful experience we kind of going through of, like, it's lucky you're Catholic because you can use this. This is an opportunity for you. There's that line, joy will come in the morning. And I don't mean like in the AM, I mean in the MOURN. Um, and, I have to say, that line is true on such deep level.
Yeah.
It's amazing how true suffering can put you in a position of real receptivity. I remember,
Mm.
a few years ago going through a loss in one of my friends, and I was doing Exodus 90 at the time, and I have to say, going through those ascetic practices with that that bleeding heart, with that
Mm.
cry of the heart, is just, just you prayed with your whole being in that moment. It kind of unlocked this ability to just contemplate Jesus in a deeper way. And yeah, like, not thankful for the event, but thankful for the experience.
Mm.
Luckily I was Catholic in that moment, because
Yeah.
it that suffering was redeemed in that, I suppose, for me in a small way, and a deeper knowledge of what's the invisible world that we live in.
Mm.
Yeah, some phenomenal experiences that Catholicism definitely, makes bad things good.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think
And
who is it? Saint Augustine talks about the heart, that sometimes God allows suffering and almost hides himself from us, because the more our heart hurts, the more it opens up, like it's like a baby bird opening its beak, like wider and wider in hunger. Like the more our heart kind of is in pain, the more it sort of stretches open to receive grace, and that God allows that because he wants to fill our hearts with as much grace as possible. So he allows that suffering not for its own sake, but because there is something, he wants to create more space that he can then fill.
yeah, yeah, and growth is always, it's a painful experience.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah, and I think something that's really easy to forget, and maybe I don't know if it's difficult to understand. Maybe it's just one of those things that really speaks to me, is how the mundane and the profane, by which I mean just human elements to life, how much they are expressions or exercises in deeper spiritual realities. Like, like I mentioned earlier with the entrepreneurship, going through that suffering for success is the same as going through suffering for sanctification. It's a similar kind of process. Or how building good, healthy relationships with the people that you meet, even your enemies, is a practice for growing in deeper relationship with Christ. And we have the big ones like marriage, your children, but even, that person at the checkout, the other, the person you get an Uber from, building those relationships and practice. It's drills to get good at speaking to God.
Mm.
And it seems so unlikely, I suppose. But and
Mm.
even things like, going to the gym, you talk about how pain opens up the heart to receive. The heart's a muscle. You know,
Mm.
pulling bicep curls are ripping your muscles apart
Mm.
so that they can grow.
Mm.
This,
Mm.
getting huge hypertrophy is a window into how you grow your heart. You do things
Mm.
that break your heart a little bit so that it can grow a bit
Mm.
bigger. And, physiologically speaking, you don't want too big of a heart. But the things that break your heart aren't physiological necessarily. You probably don't want
Mm.
to tear your heart muscle. It doesn't heal very well. You don't want to damage your heart
Mm.
in the same way that you would want
Mm.
to damage your calves or your thighs or your biceps. But the thing that will damage your heart is that deep relationship with other humans. Um,
Mm.
because humans are mean, but because, saying goodbye to your mum at the airport because you're going to Bristol or to New Zealand,
Mm.
that breaks your heart a
Mm.
little bit, but it opens it up a little bit more. And so, I
Mm.
mean, we don't want to simplify these things, but just making that point of, God has put forward in this world elements. He's sanctified things. We can grow in holiness
Mm.
through our daily lives,
Mm.
but
Mm.
we
Yeah.
still, those basic tenets of, we have to grow our heart. We have to
Yeah.
exercise spiritual muscles. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so I think that's one thing that.
Yeah. I I think that, like, I'm obsessed with analogy,
Mm,
and using analogies to understand spiritual things. And I don't think it's an accident that analogies work so well. So, for instance, like you were saying, like you talk about going to the gym and exercise, and how growing your physical muscles is analogous to spiritual exercises, and how they grow your, or suffering, and how that grows your
mm,
spiritual life. And it makes total sense to me that there are things when we look around the world, and we see similarities or we see analogies with my worldly experiences and the experiences of my spiritual life, because that is that is our human nature, that we are both body and soul. And the world, the tangible physical world, was made by the same God who we are trying to understand when we speak about spiritual matters, or when we engage in spiritual practices, or when we learn about him. And so of course it's like, of course there will be similarities between the things that we do in our everyday life and our spiritual life or theological truths, because it's all part of the same thing. It's all part of being, which is God. And so all of those different ways that we experience being are also ways that we experience God, and they can lead us to understand him better by their very nature. Like, it just, yeah, I think that's why a lot of the great sort of people like C.S. Lewis and G.K. Chesterton, they were so good at using human examples and human. It's why fiction is also an amazing kind of gateway to understanding God. Like, reading about the life, the everyday life of a person, it points towards the transcendent, because there is an inherent relationship between, the material world and the spiritual world.
Mm. Yeah, there's a lot there, man. Yeah, because I think of that. The thing about creativity is it's an overflowing of yourself. It's some things that come out of you. And I think, even analysis and technicality is similar for those who are analytical and technical. It's an overflowing of who they are. And in being truly yourself, that's where you'll find, God, because that's where he's speaking to you. Yeah, there's a lot to take in there. But I think, one thing you and I are both interested in is like how to be Catholic in like the world that we're in, how to be in the world but not of the world. And I think we've been talking a lot about how to be not of the world, because I think there is a lot of beauty, like power as well, of just being a Catholic wherever you are. But when you're wherever you are can be a problem, because we're in the world, and not to put too fine a point of it, but like Satan he's working in this world, and we have.
Yeah.
I always say there's three things working in the world: there's God, Satan, and human stupidity. And so that's two things working against us there. But so I'm writing an episode at the moment on like fatherhood, and we're talking about how the world is trying to take our families away from us. It's not even like that extreme. The world is trying to take us away from us. Netflix is trying to keep you on Netflix. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok is trying to keep you there. You see it more as a parent because you see humanity in its genesis, and like you see, oh wow, I actually do that now, and that's like a 4-year-old. They have a real deep connection to this really bad thing, and so do I actually. That's the way they got it through me. And so we have like not necessarily a satanic thing. I'm not saying Netflix is satanic. I mean, it is bread. No, but it that's the human stupidity part of it, because there is the neurological dopamine, like I'm just getting a rush, and that's just humanity. But how do we? What does Catholicism look like in this era? Because the reaction I get from most people is get rid of the phones, turn off the computers, live as a hermit, and it's not really being in the world. Then it's just not being of the world.
Yeah. Totally. And it's something that I see a lot of, that, like, I'm sure, like, most of us see a lot of it, of people sort of seeing the bad things that are happening in the world, seeing the dangers in the world, which have always existed and they exist in a particular way at the moment. And thinking, okay, well then I just need to run away. And And for some people, they are genuinely called to live away from the world, or to, be in a monastery or whatever. And that's beautiful. But most of us aren't. Most of us are called to be in the world. But how do we do that without losing our way? And speaking of analogies, the analogy that I love to use is to imagine that you're in a fortified castle with a battle raging outside, and it's a battle for the world. Like, this is going to decide everything. It's a big battle. It's important. And so you have a few options. Like, option A is that you can remain hidden inside the walls of your castle because they are impenetrable and you're not going to get hurt. Option B is that you just sort of lower the drawbridge and fling yourself with total abandon into the fight. And within, 2 seconds, you've been bludgeoned by an orc and you're dead. Option 3 is that you put on a really well-made suit of armor and you take your sword and shield and you go out into the battlefield, because this isn't like a small thing. This is the battle for the world. Like, this is the decider. Like, and so I think it's seems so attractive to just stay in the castle, because it's true. You're not gonna die in the castle. So I can see how in the secular world, there are so many things that have the danger to hurt me. The internet, on my phone, with my friends, my secular friends, or like, there are so many things out there that could hurt me and that could take me away from God. And it's true that if I go and build a hut in the woods and just like go to mass and say my prayers and never speak to anyone who isn't a Catholic like me, then I will probably remain safe. Like that in one sense, that's the safe option. But I always think, first of all, what about all of the women and children out there in the middle of that battle? What about all of the people out there who are defenseless and who need help? Like, maybe I'm safe, but then I'm not fighting in that battle. And then secondly, like, do we want to just remain safe, or do we want to be saints? And do we want to be part of the communion of saints? And do we want to be part of that, that battle that we're called to be part of? And so to me, the suit of armor and the sword and shield is a few things. It's formation. It means getting to know your faith. As we said, like, on the level that, like, you can understand it, and you don't have to get a PhD, but like, just in a small way, watching a Father Mike Schmidt's video, or like listening to a podcast that you really like, or something. Getting some formation, understanding your faith, developing a prayer life, making an actual plan for your spiritual life, putting aside time. Every day I spend this amount of time doing silent prayer with God. Every day I'm going to do these particular prayers. I'm going to go to mass on these days. Making a plan for your spiritual life. Formation, making a plan for your spiritual life. Community, like being part of a community of other Catholics who share your faith and who can support you and build you up. And if you have those things, and then the sacraments, receiving the sacraments, go to confession, go to mass, make use of the sacraments and that sacramental grace. And if you have all of that, then yes, it's scary, yes, it's hard, but you can go out into the secular world and, like, so for instance, if you take a specific example, something like your phone presents a danger. Okay, option A is that you throw your phone in the bin and you become uncontactable. Or you just have like a dumb phone that only does phone calls and texts. And some people need to do that. That's fine. Like, if you really want to detox for a while or whatever. But in one sense, that kind of, depending on the person and the circumstances, that could be the easy way out. That could be the way of not actually exercising virtue, because you're just removing the phone from your life, but you haven't grown in fortitude, you haven't grown in strength, you haven't grown in temperance. You've actually just avoided a situation where you need to exercise those virtues. And again, sometimes you need to avoid those situations. Know your strengths, know your weaknesses, and what you can and can't cope with. But maybe the more effective thing is to go through that hard slog of learning how to bit by bit get better at saying no to myself when it comes to my phone, like putting it down and not turning it on for an hour, and restraining myself from going and picking it up and checking social media or whatever it is. Developing tools and techniques and ways of kind of and then praying about it, like sharing that struggle with God in your prayer, going to confession, talking to the priest about it, getting some help from spiritual direction. And in that way, you're building the suit of armor so that then you don't have to be scared of your phone. You don't have to be like, oh, I can't have this thing anymore because it's going to like mess up my life. You can have it and you can be in control. You can have exercise self-control and you can use it responsibly and then make use of all of the good things that are on offer on your phone as well. Again, every person is different. There's no blanket approach. But to me, it's like put on your suit of armor and then get out there.
Yeah, I think because there is that tension of you've got people like, I think it's Saint Escriva that says you want to fight your battle as far away from the front line as possible. But then, like the attitude that I kind of have, and I don't know if this is kind of from the influence I've got from like self-improvement people and optimization people, is master. You know, I guess kind of a chastity. Don't be the tool. Use the tool. So don't reject it entirely. Get to I mean, sure, like if you're at a point where I'm so addicted to this game or scrolling through name your social media thing that like it's taking over my life, sure, take a month off, take 3 months off, great. But yeah, I feel like saying, oh, okay, I'm just going to get a dumb phone, I'm not going to use the internet anymore, it's quitting. It's not engaging in battle. But yeah, so that tension between the run away from your problems and master yourself is it's one that exists. I haven't heard a good. Well, and again, I think it comes back to what we were saying at the top of the show of like Christianity isn't a right answer. It's not a law. It's a relationship. So the answer, typically Catholics both and. Run away and then come back and fight the battle once you're ready.
Well, and I think that's actually a really helpful idea to complement this idea of like putting on your armor and going out to fight. Is that quote from St. Josemaria: "Fight your battles as far away from the front line as possible." Because I think that adds the element of know your strengths, know your weaknesses, know yourself. Don't just think, well, I need to fight. So for instance, if you have a pornography addiction and you've got your phone there and you're like, I know that I don't have, because that's what addiction does. If you know that you don't have the capacity to say no to yourself right now, there's no point. Why would you be like, oh no, I'm going to just put it here and I'm just not going to touch it and I'm just not going to, like, don't do that to yourself. If you know that you're not ready, if you know that your armor isn't there yet, then don't fling yourself into the battle. Don't rush to the front line and think, oh, I can handle it. I just need to be strong. Maybe actually, like you say, you do need to just quit for a while. You do need to kind of build that strength. And then once you are, you're able to tackle those things, then you can start to think about it. But it's a balance of like, yes, we ultimately want to be able to be part of this kind of spiritual warfare. We want to engage in it, but we want to do so responsibly. And remembering that our ultimate goal is to get to heaven. Our ultimate goal is to be a saint and to bring other people with us. So if it's not making me a saint, if it's not helping me be holy, then don't pursue it arbitrarily. Do the things that you know are going to help you grow closer to God and help other people grow closer to him as well.
Yeah, I suppose going back to that phrase with Saint Jose Maria, he says, he doesn't say stay as far away from the front line as possible. He says fight from as far away as possible. So still sharpen your arrows and get your aim on point, because you're going to be shooting from a long way away. Get a longbow. Put the right so it's, if you're not in a place in where you can use your phone, get in a place where you can use it, because some like Pope Benedict, is he saint yet? He should be. Anyway, Pope Benedict, he described the internet as the online continent. People are living there. Carlo Acutis, recently beatified, he spent his time on the internet evangelizing. And so, and like it's kind of, unavoidable. It's definitely unavoidable now. Now the thing that's going to be, people are questioning whether it's avoidable is whether or not you can use AI. And that's a whole other topic in itself. But like the world is moving forward, and we need to be masters of virtue, which is ancient,
Mm.
because then if we're masters of ourselves, then when we're faced with new problems, we have the answers. The answers are boring. It's the same answer every time.
Mm.
Be virtuous.
Mm. Yeah.
Work on yourself.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that always strikes me about all these self-help gurus, Tony Robbins, name the guy, whoever it is. It's just Catholic principles it comes down to. They got, maybe some techniques that aren't necessarily expressed in Catholicism, because the how doesn't really matter. It's more about the what. Be virtuous.
Mm.
Okay, if you've got a 12-step program that gets you there, great. But there's probably a million other ways of doing it. And I like what you said earlier about when we were talking about the, technical and the spiritual side of the Christian faith. Like how crap would it be if there's only one way to receive the Lord? Because there are so many different people. There are people with, what we might call deficiencies nowadays, but just, brain makeup, different brain makeups, different personalities, different interests. And, I suppose that's what speaks more of the truth of the reality of God, is that he didn't come in one way. He came, and the truth is real. He's everywhere. He came for everybody in everything. And you don't need to necessarily explain it. You just need to experience it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, on whatever level you can kind of access it. Yeah.
One question I did have, which I sent you earlier, is we've been talking about this. We've got all this great content as Catholics. We've got these saints that we've been quoting. We've got theological texts. But why are Protestants better at being Christian than us? Like, we see people like George Janko, Stuart, and Cliff. I can't say his last name. Knetchell. Anyway, those guys that speak on they even just listening to like Charlie Kirk's memorial, all the people that spoke at that were speaking in this really bold way and almost kind of like what's the word? It's like it's seriousness about the faith. Like it's about to happen. It's real. Jesus is coming, as if it's tomorrow, and they talk about it quite brazenly. And they're just out there saying it to people. But I don't see that in Catholicism. Like we have, we have Matt Fradd, and he's got his podcast, and we've got Catholic Answers, and a few other people that'll do debates. But it's always from a studio. It's always a debate. It's not a going out and meeting people in the streets talking about Thomas Aquinas, or like because it wouldn't be that. But like, I don't see. I mean, I may be wrong. I might have just been not looking in the right places. But I see it in Protestantism all the time. In that they're saying, come and talk to me because I've got something for you. Whereas the Catholics is like, we've got something for you. You can come here if you want, and then we'll get you to read a bunch of stuff, and it just seems like we've got all these barriers to entry. And whereas in the Protestant world, they're kind of, you guys need to know this because we're all going to die and we don't know when.
Yeah. And I think, well, there's a few things in there. One, it just reminded me when you were talking about like going out and meeting people on the street. There was, I saw something that Bishop Robert Barron posted recently where it was in conjunction with some other evangelizing group where he just went out and stood in the middle of the city with a sign that said, "I'm a bishop. Do you have any questions?" And people came over and asked him questions, and he gave them blessings, and that was beautiful to see. And I think the thing is, it does happen, but in a different way and for understandable reasons. Because when you think about the difference between Protestantism and Catholicism, Protestant theology has the concept of like, you're saved and you're not saved, and the way to be saved, I mean, we also think you're saved or you're not saved, but for a Protestant, the only way to be saved is if you explicitly, not for all Protestants, I'm generalizing here, but it is more common in Protestant theology to believe that the only way to be saved is if you explicitly acknowledge Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. And baptism is just a symbol. And if you don't explicitly acknowledge Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, then you will not go to heaven. Whereas Catholic theology says, yes, you need to be baptized to go to heaven. You need to be in a state of grace. And that's through baptism. But we also have this thing called the baptism of desire. So if someone has never even heard of the name of Jesus and they don't explicitly believe in him, they haven't accepted him as their Lord and Savior, but if they are deeply and truly desiring in their heart to do good and to actually seek God, even if they don't articulate it in that way and they don't even understand that that's what they're doing, they may still actually be able to enter into the state of grace. They may still be able to receive that baptism of desire. And so the positive side of that is that we can, we don't necessarily always need to get someone to, say, I believe in Jesus, or it's not always a case of like, well, unless this person, like, if we don't, if they don't come to my church and believe in Jesus and whatever, then they're going to go to hell. We can hope that the people that we are friends with maybe can come to be close to God, even if they don't even realize yet that that's what they're doing. And I think there are a lot of people who will get to the end of their life and the curtain will be lifted and they'll be face to face with God, and their reaction will be to say, oh, it's you. I know you. I didn't realize it. Like, you were behind a curtain this whole time, but I recognize you, and I have a friendship with you, even though I didn't realize it. So the positive side of that is that it's not always necessary to be evangelizing in the same way. We can, through personal friendship, through conversations about truth and philosophy. There is this wonderful woman, Alice von Hildebrand, who is Dietrich von Hildebrand's wife, and she has a book called The Happy Failure, Memoirs of a Happy Failure, where she talks about how she spent her whole career as a philosophy professor, and she never once mentioned God to her students. The only thing that they would discuss is the concept of objective truth. Is there such a thing as truth? And is it objective? That is it. And then so many of her students came back to her years later and said, I've converted to Catholicism, even though she never mentioned God to them, because for her, she was like, once they understand that there is a concept of objective truth and they start to pursue it, then they naturally come to know God. And so that was her way of evangelizing. So for us as Catholics, it might be more subtle, but we can, through our friendship, through discussions about hot button issues or about the nature of truth or about suffering, we can actually be still evangelizing. And obviously we ultimately want our friends to get to the point where they explicitly believe in Jesus. It's not like we ignore that. But at the same time, having said all of that, I do think that sometimes that can lead us to be a bit comfortable and to be like, well, my friend hasn't come to church, but like, she's a good person, and I'm sure she loved God, and I'm sure that when she dies, like, she'll be one of those people who goes to heaven, even though she didn't. Like, and it's like, well, I mean, that's what we hope for, of course, but that shouldn't be plan A. That should not be plan A. Plan A should be that my friend comes to know Jesus explicitly, and that she comes to church in this life, and that she, like, it might not be that is the only way for her to be saved, but that's what we want. And so I think sometimes Catholics can be a little bit and I'm saying Catholics, but I'm kind of reflecting from my own experience that I definitely have a tendency to do this, to almost take it for granted, or to it's easy for that hope to become a kind of presumption that, like, oh, I'm sure my friends are all fine. And maybe they're not. Maybe we actually do need, sometimes we do. There is something about the fact that Protestants have that sense of urgency. Like, I really need to tell my friends about Jesus, because if they don't hear about Jesus, they're not going to go to heaven. And I think we can learn a lot from that. I think it's a
100%.
positive, a really, really admirable quality. And there are plenty of people who are interested in Catholicism, or who would be open to Catholicism. And the reason they don't become a Catholic is because an evangelical Protestant came up to them at church, on campus at university, and invited them to their church, and then invited them to Bible study, and then were really proactive and having these conversations with them and taking the initiative. And then that person, becomes a Protestant, because that is way more kind of inviting and attractive than a friend who you kind of know is Catholic, but they never really say anything to you about it. And I
Yeah.
guess they go to church, but I don't know how to ask them about it. And I'd actually love to know about it, but they never bring it up. And they're sort of, it's almost like they're hiding it. Like, can't we talk about this? And well, of course, I'm going to gravitate towards the person who is sitting down next to me at a party and being like, so have you ever met Jesus? Like, and I think we kind of lean away from that as Catholics. We don't want to be cringy. We don't want to kind of impose on people, but sometimes we need to. Sometimes we need to be brave and just honest about, what we believe, and then and really try to reach people on that level. So I think there is still work to be done for sure.
I think it's almost like saying, we're on a ferry going to heaven, let's say, and the Protestants are all saying you need to be saying these things, which is true. You saying those things are good. You should say those things. I believe in Jesus Christ, and there's lots of power just in that phrase. Let's not demean. The only way we can declare the name of Christ is through the Holy Spirit working in us, and so all that's true. But the Catholics are more like, when you get off, you're going to need these things. And so when you just you need to know what truth is. Morality is a good one, and so this is what I'm going to tell you about. And but we can almost do it without mentioning God, which is what the von Hildebrandt was saying. She didn't mention God, and it seems ridiculous. But I think also again, it's the spiritual way that we see in kind of human life every day. You want to wake up early, don't go to bed early, just wake up early and just be tired, and then you will go to sleep early eventually. Doing things, sometimes it seems a bit counterintuitive, the way to do things, but it's the best way of doing it. It's the most effective way of doing it. Knowing these vital fundamental concepts, once you know these and they are part of your vernacular, the rest will just happen. You don't need to worry about the details. You'll be a Catholic eventually. Or at least if you get to the point of getting off the boat and you're at the pearly gates, you'll recognize all the street signs. Oh, I know where this goes. And so I suppose that's a nice way of putting it, but as everything with Catholicism, it's a both and situation. We need to get into because I guess it isn't important that you make someone say Jesus is Lord. And I was reflecting on the concept of an altar call when I was watching the Charlie Kirk memorial, and the guy at the beginning did an altar call type thing, and I was thinking, what's an altar for? Why are you calling people to the altar that you're talking about? Because my altar is one where you get sacrificed. That's where it comes from. It's about putting your body on there and giving yourself up to God. And I suppose there is a spiritual altar, spiritual giving sacrifice. But coming from tradition, I just felt like it seemed a bit inappropriate, the concept of an altar call. Come to the altar and you believe, and I guess so, yeah. But it didn't. It doesn't communicate well to a Catholic when you think our altar is in the church, and that's where we have mass, and mass is a very specific thing. And I think lots of things. But yeah, there is. We need to be more like the Stuart and Cliff and George and Charlie. That's a really good thing. But we also need to do the Catholic thing, which is ensure people have the right tools. And it's like, again, you were saying about how do we deal with the world? We put on armor. We make sure it's all got no dents in it, so it's ready to go, as strong as can be. And we pass those pieces of equipment onto other people. Oh, by the way, you have this armor as well, and you should probably sharpen that sword. And this is how you do it. You'll know how to use it once you've finished sharpening it, type thing. When the time comes, don't worry about it. And so there is something beautiful and good about that, but then it's still, it kind of leaves me questioning. Is like, I want to see a revival, and I think I want to see thousands of people, which happened in the States last year, the 50,000 people at the Eucharistic Conference, whatever it was. So, I mean, it's not impossible, but it's just...
Yeah. And actually, I think it's interesting you mentioned the Eucharistic Congress, because at the end of the day, I think sometimes we think of, when it comes to evangelization, we think of prayer and the sacraments like a kind of backup or like something that happens on the side. And that the number one thing in evangelization is my conversations with my friends. I need to sit my friend down and say these things to her, or teach her this, or help her through this situation. And if that doesn't work out, I guess I can always pray for her. And of course I go to mass and like I'll pray for her during mass and stuff. But then the main thing is that I evangelize, I say these things to her. No, it's the opposite. It is the other way around. That revival, it's too easy to just think, oh, it's all about my explicit, my actions or the things that I say. But actually, first and foremost, if we want a revival, it's not about talking about Jesus more. It's not about convincing people or being louder or more public or more, and not that any of that's bad. But first and foremost, it is actually about the state of my soul personally. Do I pray? Am I praying every day? And do I explicitly pray for my friends? Do I bring them to the Mass? Do I go to Mass as often as possible? Do I receive our Lord as often as possible? If everyone is doing that, then the rest will follow naturally. The thing that caused 50,000 people to come to the Eucharistic Congress wasn't the advertising, it wasn't the marketing, it wasn't the social media, it wasn't the presence of Bishop Robert Barron or Father Mike or Jonathan Rumi. It was the Eucharist. That's the thing that is going to win people over, prayer and the sacraments. And I think it's an important thing, I think, to return to, because at the moment we are seeing a real resurgence in those external things, in publicly talking about Jesus, in Christianity appearing more in the political sphere and in the broader social sphere. All those things are fine, but if they occur without every individual personally having a prayer life and having a sacramental life, then it's gonna be like a paper house with nothing inside it. And as soon as it gets poked, it's going to fall down. So first and foremost, prayer and the sacraments.
Yeah, because I was thinking about this earlier. This year, we had Father Andrew Dalton over, and he talked to us about the Shroud of Turin, and he had a replica, and he went into the details of it. And my goodness, it was phenomenal.
Yeah.
You know all about it. Your dad's William West, but Father Dalton did it in this beautiful way, which is both technical and relational, and it just had such an impact on everybody that came into contact with the information that he was presenting. It was just brilliant. And off the back of that, I was emailing, lots of other people who's going to come tour New Zealand next. That's part of what we do here with Evangelion. And I had Jason Everett on the cards. I had Chris Stefanik on the cards, and they all backed out. And I was like, oh, great, I've got nothing now. And so I'm pursuing a few other options. But someone came to me the other day and said, hey, it was Padre Pio's feast day recently, and someone that are touring some relics around, I think in the UK or in America somewhere. So why don't we bring them here? And it got me thinking, is like the thing that was brilliant about Father Dalton, more the content he was talking about, which it was not the same, and I don't mean to demean Catholic speakers, but it's not the same as getting Jason Everett or Chris Stefanik out, is no one knows Andrew Dalton, but they all know Jesus. And therefore, the main draw card for that tour was the Shroud of Turin, was the burial cloth that Jesus was buried in. And so, it's not about the words we say. It's not about the message that we make sure people hear from our mouths. It's about bringing people to encounter Christ. And that comes in the form of, because we're, in the Catholic tradition, that comes in the form of tangible, real things you can touch, taste, see, smell. That comes in the flavor of, I say flavor, that was of blood and body and blood, the bread and wine. It comes in, the reality of Saint Gianna having walked amongst us, and she being a faithful Catholic, and Padre Pio, and they'd left things on this earth. When I was talking to Father Dalton, I was saying, in the age of optimization and operationalizing your life so that everything is efficient, the way that God decided to bring salvation to the world was really inefficient. So much so that he left stuff everywhere, and we've still got that stuff. And you can still come into contact with the cross, with the nails, with the crown of thorns, with the burial cloth of Jesus, and with everybody, every martyr and believer leading up until today. We can find, Bishop Pompelia, the first bishop in New Zealand, goes all the way back to St. John, the disciple. We can follow that path. And he made a mess, and he did it. The best way possible was the worst way possible. It was the messiest, took longest to happen, because he was leaving evidence. He is showing that he was incarnate, and people can have a contact with him. And going back to the point you were making of, we, evangelizing someone else starts with me, because that's how they're going to have it. They're going to encounter Christ through me, not because I'm fantastic, but because if I'm turning to Christ constantly, he's going to shine through me. Moses went into the tent, he came out glowing, not because he glows, but because he'd been in the presence of Christ. And we can bring that shine. They will know you by the way that you love. How do we love? The way that Jesus did. And the way that he loved was just insane. It makes no sense. Why are you doing that? You don't need to do that.
Yeah. I think the more we get to know God, the more we will resemble him, and the more naturally people will see him in us, and that will draw them to him.
Well, we've been going for almost an hour and a half, and I could keep going for another few hours. You are a delight to talk to, and you've got lots of knowledge, and you just give it in a really good way. So, what are you working on at the moment?
I guess just like chugging on with the podcast. One thing I want to develop while I'm here is doing some more in-person speaking. It's something that I get a lot of joy out of, that I prefer to being sort of on my own, speaking into a microphone, into the ether. I really, really prefer, personal contact. So hopefully I'll be able to do more of that while I'm here in the UK.
Brilliant. And whenever you come back over to Australia, give us a bell. We'll get you to come over to New Zealand, and we'll get you to do some more in-person talking. Maybe we could have this podcast in person. That is my dream, and hopefully I can make it a reality. So thanks for joining us for this podcast, and everybody listening, thank you for joining in, and I want you to get involved in the mission. We're not just talking about an idea here. This isn't an ideology. This isn't just another philosophy amongst philosophies. This is the truth, the way, and the life. It's Jesus Christ, and he gave us this church. And I want to spread this gospel with you. So if you want to get behind me, I do need your prayers, but I also need your money. So if you want to donate to us, come to evangelion.co.nz and support us. But more than anything, just click like, share, and subscribe, because it's about getting this message out here. And, I'd do it for free if I could. Unfortunately, we're not to be of the world, but we are in the world. So thanks for your time. Stay curious and stay Catholic. God bless.